Ethiopia's economy is forecast to grow by 9% in the 2019-2020 financial year. The country's finance minister, Ahmed Shide, has proposed a $13.48 billion expenditure plan, which, if approved, will be 12% higher than the 2018-2019 spending bill. Lawmakers from the ruling coalition are expected to approve the plans over the next few weeks. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has recently embarked on ambitious reforms, including proposals to open up the state-owned telecoms firm and the national carrier Ethiopian Airlines to private investors. The move is aimed at boosting the country's revenue and consolidates its relations with other countries. All right, so let's discuss this further with Gurum Chala. He joins us here in studio. Gurum, a pleasure to have you with us. So let's talk about the big news coming out of Addis Ababa, and that's, of course, liberalizing the telecommunications sector. When do we expect the interested players to set up shop there? So
first of all, opening up the telecom sector itself, as you've said, is a big news for Ethiopia. For 125 years, the telecom sector has been closed. It's been milking cow, as many would like to call it, because of the huge revenues it brings to the country. Now, under Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's reform, they want to open up. Why do they want to open up? First of all, before we talk about the coming of new actors, because they want to modernize it and perhaps make the best out of it for more economic growth. There are, surprisingly, so many interested actors coming from the global telecom sector, but we don't exactly know when they're going to start operating, because the proclamation itself needs to be endorsed. It was planned for last week, but it's coming up perhaps in the coming few days. After that, we shall see, but there are many interested companies, including from China. Huawei and ZTE are already there, and others are also joining up. Okay, so you did mention it's part of the economic reforms that the Prime Minister talked about in 2018. But what about the much talked about stock exchange? When are we likely to see that established? Just to paint a picture, Penina, first, out of the 54 countries in the continent, 29 of them at least have a stock exchange market. Ethiopia, being the fastest growing economy in the continent, even today, as you've said it earlier, 9% at the moment, which is lower than the 11% due to several reasons, does not have that stock market. It's for some economists, it's a sad story. For 20 years, there was an agreement in the country to establish that stock market. But now I think the waiting should be over. By 2020, the government has a plan to open this stock exchange and make it a reality at the end of the day. But there are still hurdles in the middle in making this process happen. One of them is the financial structure itself in the country, and also to bring the private sector into the financing, the business of growing the country and globally integrating Ethiopian economy so that the best can be seen. However, the stock exchange, the wait is over. It's going to come up, and we'll see how it's going to change the country's economy. Okay, so Ethiopia has racked up quite some significant amounts of debt in financing these huge infrastructure projects that it's been undertaking. So what's the government's strategy to construct an economic foundation and still manage to pay off investments? So Ethiopia is one of the countries in Africa with huge debt, but it's not for all bad reasons. First of all, we should also understand that we talked about the telecom sector, and I want to give you one very good example of how this borrowing money from other states is also working positively to repay it at the end of the day. From China, $2.7 billion were borrowed to modernize and expand the telecom sector. And 10 years ago, Ethio Telecom had only 1 million customers. After the expansion and using the money, the $2.7 billion borrowed from Exim Bank of China, Development Bank of China, today Ethio Telecom has 45 million customers and counting. So Ethio Telecom, by using these customer numbers, is also supporting the Ethiopian economy. Part of it is debt repayment. So Ethiopia is aligned itself in different economic sectors to repay its debt. One of them is telecom, and the other one is the industrialization. As you know, industrialization is being expanded in the country, and the industrial sector is now paying back huge amounts of foreign currencies coming up because of the industrial development in the country, and that is also supporting countries like China to be paid back the money they have borrowed. What is in the pipeline is the most important point, Penina, now. In Ethiopia, the industrialization is going to be strengthened. This liberalization of sectors like Telecom and the Ethiopian Airlines, selling partial shares to the huge international companies is going to also help Ethiopia get huge amount of money. The other most important part is opening up the financial sector, the banks and others, which is going to come up. But the country is not just doing this blindfolded. It's doing it one step at a time. But I can tell you for sure that Ethiopia is doing fine when it comes to repaying its debt, and it has a strategy on the pipeline. Things are not easy, but it's working for the country.
Okay, Gurum, thank you very much for those insights. Gurum Challenge Studio with us.